Well, hello there, everybody. How are y'all doing? Yeah, I was just a couple of seconds late. I was deep in the thought of writing a thought down, but hey, you know what it's like. Welcome everybody to Wednesday Hump Day, I guess is what they call it. Depends on your perspective, but here in the West, you know, that's how we do it. So, welcome everybody. Thank you for being a part of all this journey, this most interesting trip indeed. Speaking favor over us all, nothing missing, nothing broken. May peace mount guard over you all the time. So, what's up? Hey, chat room. Good to see everybody. I was looking at some of the comments a little, Daedra. Good to see Grace. Hello, Lost in Space. Flight Risk. Good to see you. Jackie and Deborah Sloan. How you doing, Doug? Loretta and Seth, I think the doctor's in the house. Gaia, how you doing? Much love to you. Marcia, how are you? So good to see you. Missed you. Love to have you on again. Let's know what's been a couple of years. So yeah, much love to you, darling. Favor upon you. Everybody else, Ghost, Carol, good to see you. Mary Wins, how you doing? Ginger, Lauren, how you doing, darling? DC, good to see you as well. Troy, Nina, how you doing? Cecilia, hello. Good to see you as well. Rick, what's up, brother? Mr. Floyd. Man, so many people in the house. So home, homecoming feels good. So I hope you are doing well. And as the world continues to spin out of control, I don't know, you know, guess it's depending on how you look at things. And I got to tell you right up front, we're going to be reading some, well, I mean, it's older than all of us combined. Um, And there is no offense meant to any person, race, creed, religion, political. Hey, we discuss things that are pertinent to our existence, who we are, what makes us who and what we think we are. We're really good at defining that. I am, you finish it out. But nevertheless, it has to be talked about because as I wrote here, give me a second here as I go. Um, what we're talking about are beliefs. We're talking about commerce, trade, religion, politics. We're talking culture. We're talking society. We're talking as a species. And that is built upon a belief of a past belief system. The problem is today is that there's really no new belief system. I was looking in my library. We're going to be discussing a lot of this. We're going to be dealing specifically with the history of what we would call the ancient Near East. It's all been changed. Um, we're going to be dealing, if we've talked about this before, the Golden Dawn, what it was predicated on and based on. We're going to be talking about this guy. By the way, this is out of print. I didn't know that. And then we're going to be talking about how these beliefs impact every one of us. So it's just a warning ahead of time. But if we can't talk openly as a society, as a culture, then all of this is nothing. This is all make believe. It is truly the control of the mind. I think in that period leading up to the first century, where the culture was to meet in amphitheaters, every town had one. And It was a place where you could come during the day, come in with, your pita, and, you got a little bit of olive oil, you're going to be dipping it, and you would hear philosophers. You would hear people talking. Now, unfortunately, women were not allowed in that. That's a part of this as well. But my point is, it was the ability to speak openly about any subject without, how shall we say, offending anyone. And if we can address this, then we truly are a ship of fools, because someone doesn't want that particular point of view heard. Control, baby. That's what it is. So we got a lot to cover. So this is considered Holy Week in the West. And we have to remember that we are in the West. There, spiritually and philosophically, culturally, there is a difference between East and West. Two diametrically opposed belief systems. One is old, one is new. But the one that is old has been basically shut out. Why? Well, there was an agenda taking place in the West, and it was truly about total control. And since we're talking about this is a week in which the world has this belief, and I would say the world, the predominant religion, which is part of the Abrahamic belief systems, Christianity in this point, and how this whole belief system is all made up. Story never happened. It happened in the fact that it was crafted, and once it began to infiltrate the what would be in the current belief system as a virus, it came in and changed the very DNA of a community, of a culture, of a people, of a race. And that has serious consequences. Because for me, I believed and was taught that there was a God, and that this God could be found in a book called a Bible, and that I could read in there and I could discover God. I could discover myself in a relationship with God, and that basically takes the corona, the crown of your thinking. Everything is filtered through that crown. And for a mind that was told you can't question this, it's unquestionable. It is full authority. It is, this is the real deal. And we grow up in a society where you then begin to have and see contrast to those beliefs. And when those beliefs are challenged, you could find a particular group of people, a community, a denomination, weird term, of so-called like-minded people. And everyone would be rallying behind this belief system. It impacts laws. The justice system is predicated upon a foundation of laws that are held to a belief system that we are told actually happened. Well, if it actually happened, then we should have the ability to use our vain imaginations. Isn't it weird? You have to have the imagination to believe it. But if you begin to believe something differently, then that's vanity. You know, you're straying off the path. But when you start examining this belief, you begin to find out that there is something going on. Now, I think about Brandon, love you, brother. And he, like me and so many others, and there's many of us now. I read recently again that the number of people leaving the church, quote unquote, has never been witnessed in the modern era. Probably a reason for that. And this is some of the things we're going to get into. So, to set the belief system, if you believe the Old Testament, right? I mean, without the Old Testament, you would never have the occult, worship of demons, understanding of demons. You wouldn't have this. Why? Because it's all predicated upon this God. Now, this God is in the Old Testament. Well, you don't know what that God is. You don't. And what we're going to get into is primarily the Hebrew race, which doesn't exist anymore. Jewish transition of genetics and everything else. But anyway, because there was no Jewish race, there was no Hebrews. And the story starts with this cat coming out of Sumer, Abram, from the Ur of the Chaldees. He was in the city of Ur in the district of the Chaldees of the Sumerian Empire. This case, our character, came from a belief where his family, they made idols and other worship items and were what we would call the priest and priestess of the temple of Iana, the moon goddess. So Abram gets a hair up his ass one day and decides to wander off. And I don't know, maybe got some bad tea or something. Who knows? Maybe the hash was not acceptable. Yeah, they had it back then, folks. But anyway, I digress. But it was used primarily in a sense of spiritual shamanship and, being able to be in touch with the gods. Yeah. So high, but I digress. So anyway, the cat comes out, gets out on the plains, and I don't know. I mean, it apparently that slavery was very much the in thing. And he meets this thing called itself God. Now, I often thought it was weird that Abram would just accept this out. I mean, he came from a belief system where it was Enki, Enya, Inanna. I mean, it's connected to the Anunnaki. It was there before the Bible was even, a fart in the cosmic consciousness. And yet, this whole story starts. Because the whole Adam story and the rest of that, well, that's in La La Land. But no, it's real because we can do the genealogy. It says who? So anyway, now this is important. So this entity calls itself God. He has no beginning, he has no end. Sure. But if you read that story, you say, okay, so this has to be incorporated into the motif of the whole setting. And supposedly Abram makes this deal, then he's called Abraham. He's going to be the ruler, the father of many nations. And from there, you get this trifecta. Okay. So I was a Christian at one time. I worshiped the God that was called the Christian God. That was the God of Father, the Father. And, there was this other thing called the Holy Spirit. But it wasn't like the Jewish God. I was told that that was reconciled because Paul writes in the book of Romans and later in Galatians and the Ephesians, how this was a branch, and uses this beautiful metaphor that, the branch is going to be grafted to the vine and everybody's just going to have a real good time. The problem is that philosophy, that ideology doesn't hold up because this belief system in this God, the God of the United States. It's on our money. You can go anywhere in America and see steeples. You'll see the First Baptist Church. You'll see the 99th Baptist Church. You get the Methodist. You get the Catholic. Oh, wait a minute. Catholics are not Christians. Well, that's what Protestants will tell you. But it all started from the Catholics. And that is a mystery there because how did that start? Because the truth of the matter is, the thing that we call Christianity today didn't really start occurring until the late 4th century. And if you believe the story, that's nearly 400 plus years since this event happened. The United States is not even 400 years. And look how people today, they don't know, they do not know. You could go out and read on a public square, probably be arrested for it, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence. Most people wouldn't know what you're talking about. But yeah, we're talking about the ability now of this mind virus that was started. Now, having set that as the backdrop, let's get into this a little deeper because, folks, this is important. It affects every one of us. No matter what your perception of God is, it's tainted. Flat out. But let's talk about who Jehovah, Yahweh, Elohim, however you want to title it, because that's confusing with. But then they tell you, well, you have to understand the pretext of the valve and the noun and how, no. Listen, if you have to create that type of bullshit, then your story's not, how shall we say, authentic or believable. All right, so put this little presentation together because, no, let me start out here and we'll get back to here. So we're going to be talking about today the Talmud. Go back, and I think it was the one of the dollar bill video. This is the person who wrote this was brilliant. I love the comments. By the way, as I told the doc, if you see your comment deleted, I'm not deleting it. So figure out from that, because and I guarantee you there's only one of me within me. So we're talking about the Babylonian Talmud. Now, it's interesting that they incorporate Babylon because historically, that is where the Hebrews died off. And what emerged out of Babylon were the children of Israel. And from there, they eventually became known as the Jewish people. So it's the Babylonian tumult, which is filled with all sorts of occultism, paganism. Paganism, by the way, is going to be another key thing we're going to talk about. Cheers, everyone. Many of us who have studied the occult, so much of it originated out of Babylon. Well, hell, it's the key role in the book of Revelation, the great whore, Babylon. Many people say it's the United States. Well, the United States is a whore, but which one, I'm not sure. So anyway, we're going to be dealing with this book, and I've only read excerpts of it. I have not read it all. It's a rather lengthy book. You get a book over 3,000 pages, and brother, you've got serious reading. But there is all sorts of laws here. In my place that I keep kind of like your portfolio, I actually at one time had a Jewish prayer shawl. And if you've ever had a Jewish prayer shawl, you understand where the beads are, the knots, and for what their purpose is. A lot of that comes out of here because there is a rule and a law for everything. I mean, concerning throwing from one ground into another. And there's terminology in here that for the Western mind, we're going, what? Catching of reptiles, animals, and birds, concerning weaving, tearing, hunting on the Sabbath. Very big deal. I was watching Robert V. and Dilbert on there. I thought it was interesting when Dilbert was talking about in Germany, you can't do any work on Sunday. See? Let's continue. As you can see, concerning articles which may be saved from the conflagration on the Sabbath. I mean, it gets into it deep. And then we're going to get into, let me get over here as he goes, why ain't that working? Here we go. Oh. Into this one. This cat, master magician. I mean, this cat, wow, because this is the linchpin. This cat right here. And when you consider all the evidence, you're going to walk away going, something ain't right here. And you bet your ass something ain't right. So I'm going to stop there. We'll come back. But let's continue on. So I put this little thing together because number one, I love the whole format of PowerPoint. It's a great conversational aid. So everything we have today in our total belief systems, I don't care what it is, it's an illusion. I mean, you've got people out there that, say that, the United States has got to turn back to God and, and their whole perception of God is really this distorted kaleidoscope that's out of focus. And, no one can actually define it, but they'll show you a book that they created a whole history behind. Because when you read the following, we got a huge disconnect. And the truth of the matter is, we all are infected. So, who is God? Is God Hebrew, Sumerian, Christian, Islamic, Hindu? Some people will say, well, no, God is all of those. Well, then you are a universalist. You believe in the fact that, there is this whole, but it's subdivided. That's cool. But it still begs the question, in each one of these categories, there is a complete culture, a complete history. And the problem you've got on top of that is that you can't blend all these histories together. There's distinct differences of opinion, dare I say. So, what we're dealing with, the largest part of this audience, we are born under the lordship of the Western world. And in the Western world, God is found in both the Old Testament and the New Testament. Old Testament meaning Old Covenant, New Testament meaning New Covenant. And from there, we get the crowd of characters: Jewish belief system, Christian, Jehovah, Lord, Jesus. Defines the West. It could be said that ever since the Roman Empire was converted into Christianity, that the Roman Empire is the longest lasting form of government ever known to man. And if you look at what happened, we will, right around that 375 AD period, and again, no one knows really the date. But anyway, that was an official book burning. And out of that was born this belief system that we are told is factual history. The problem is, all of these are in direct conflict with each other. I mean, you could look at this in so many different ways, but we're going to take strictly what the evidence shows. So you have to ask yourself, what does this Jewish God say about Gentiles? Because there's a clear delineation between, and I'll just lay it out, between a Jewish belief system, a Christian belief system, and even an Islamic belief system. I've had apologists tell me, well, but they all say the same thing. My ass, they say the same thing. That's a goddamn lie. Whatever God we're talking about. And the next question then becomes, how can a Jewish Hebrew God be the Gentile God? It's an impossibility. The 7 principles of the Hermetic belief system is not even addressed. This is one of those, how shall we say, conundrums, paradoxes that can't be reconciled. This whole freaking book, The Golden Dawn, is predicated upon a distinct and ever-present lie. In fact, I would say this about probably 70% of the modern-day occultism that is predicated upon the Kabbalah is a goddamn lie. It can't exist. It can't be reconciled. And here's why. Because you've got Gentiles who have taken a Jewish Hebrew rite and made it their own. The problem is the God itself. This is from the Talmud. Jehovah created the non-Jew in human form so that the Jew would not have to be served by beast. The non-Jew is consequently an animal in human form and commanded to serve the Jew day and night. Midrash Teliph, page 225. Now, excuse me, how the hell do you get a God of love out of this? This didn't go away. This is the Hebrew God, the God of supposedly the Messiah, which there is none, Savior of the world. Oh, it gets worse. The Akim, the Golem, us, the non-Jew, is like a dog. Yes, the scripture teaches to honor the dog more than the non-Jew. Again, I'm not in any way disparaging any belief system here. I'm just simply looking at the written word of a sacred book. Quotes from it. The Sanhedrin 59a, murdering a Goem, a Gentile, is like killing a wild animal. Even the best of the Gentiles should be killed. The Gentiles who praise unto the law, the tumult, is guilty of death. Just us reading this. To communicate anything to a Gentile, a Goy, about our religious relations would be equal to the killing of all Jews. For it is the Goem knew what we teach about them, they would kill us openly. And I could read further onto this, but some of it is just offensive. Here we go. I do have to read this part. Let's see. Christianity is the lie. And it's part of their writings on the laws. They can lie to us. I mean, it's crazy. A Jew may do to a non-Jewish, a woman, what he can do. He may treat her as he treats a piece of meat. That Jesus did his miracles through sexual magic, that he was a blasphemer. It also reads how the Jews teach that Jesus is in hell, suffering the burning fires of unholy excrement and being boiled in human semen. The tumult brags that the rabbis rightly condemned Jesus to death for his crimes. It also speaks terrible lies and words against the Jesus human mother, Mary, accusing her of being a prostitute who had many partners, including Roman soldiers and even a blacksmith. The tumult even accuses her of bestiality. So my point to all of this, folks, is that how, you can, and you have your own opinion on, but for myself, this is in direct conflict with, again, the God that I thought was this God of love. But any way you look at it, this Old Testament God looks at Gentiles in a different way. And then how do you do it? The Jews must always try to deceive the Christians. Jehovah created the non-Jew in human form. I mean, it's difficult to reconcile. Now, the interesting thing is that even Jesus, in the Gospel of John, the woman at the well, called her a dog. And you get this and you go, but how the hell did this happen? Because someone's stealing, someone's lying about something here. We're going to be talking about paganism, the one true belief that all others stole from to create their religions. Now, I know that that's controversial. I get that. But when we look at it, give me 1 second here. It's not like I said, I know this is a tough subject. But as a philosopher, I mean, I was a minister. I went into the prisons, the hospitals. I did street preaching because I was convinced that this Old Testament God really was a Western God, and that we fashioned and conditioned it to a set image of which then we all pretended that, we love one another and God bless you. We love you, brother. We love you, sister. I mean, and this is how it built. The United States holds up proud that, they claim that, we are the God's chosen nation. Well, it can't be the Old Testament God unless his chosen race. And that's what it says in the book of Genesis. He told them that over and over again. You're not part of the human race. They're not humans, at least not in the sense that you are. It's right in the book. Read Genesis, read Deuteronomy, Leviticus. It's clearly stating a separation. Now, that God cannot be the modern day God. I don't know who that modern day God is. Because when I look at it, Friday, I have Nina on. We're going to be talking. I invited JT to come on as well because it's Good Friday. We're going to get more into that. That's a myth. That date, that whole thing is made up. And let me just get into this. So we now have this entrenched belief system. You see, Easter's not really about a religious holiday. It's really about the goddess of prostitution, sexuality, fertility. It's the natural way of the earth. She gives birth again. She's fertile. But that has been incorporated today where you got churches that do this all the time. I know as a kid, Easter egg hunts. That is a Roman pagan holiday. But that's totally acceptable, right? No, it's paganism. And if you're saying that they had to take something that wasn't theirs to begin with, then where does the real truth lie? Let me share this. So, says everybody loves Easter, whether it's the chocolate bunnies or egg hunts. But did you ever stop to think where these traditions came from? How did a celebration of Christ's resurrection come to be celebrated with rabbits and chocolate eggs? Well, we have some answers here, because Easter is and was and shall always be a pagan festival. We dress our children up in Easter clothes. This is paganism just completely through and through. Even the day is predicated on paganism. Yeah, much like Christmas. As Christianity gained popularity, and how did Christianity gain popularity? By the sword. Blood. You either believed or they'd strip you of all your property, give it away. I mean, yeah. A lot of pagan customs and rituals were integrated into the Christian festivals like Easter. So let's take a little bit look at this. The origin of Easter. While Christmas was a celebration of the winter solstice, Easter was a celebration of the spring equinox for the pagans. Pagans lived their lives in strong accordance with nature's rhythms and patterns, and solstices and equinoxes were considered to be sacred times. A solstice marks the longest or shortest day of the year, while an equinox symbolizes the day when there is balance between daylight and darkness. This shows the end of one season and the beginning of another. In the northern hemisphere, Easter falls on the spring equinox, when winter is coming to an end and nature is experiencing the rebirth and renewal. This is naturally a cause for festivals and celebrations. As the darkness comes to an end, plants and leaves start to regrow after the cold winter. According to mid-300 AD, Christianity was increasing in popularity in Rome, then the center of the world. In 312, the Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity, and there is still controversy on this. There is a background thought that goes, not necessarily. Constantine realized that the world was changing. He saw it. I mean, do you really think that the Hebrew God is the God of the world when it was very clearly defined in the Bible what its borders are, and it never transgressed those borders? So, was Constantine truly a convert, or did he see that the legacy of his bloodline and that of the Holy Mother Rome, that she would continue on in perpetuity, excuse me? Yeah. Anyway, let's go with the story. Converted to Christianity and put an end to the ongoing persecution of Christians. However, he knew that just because he had converted, it didn't mean that pagans would stop following their rituals and traditions. So he slowly started to adapt existing pagan rituals into the Christian festivals. So who's starting all this? The pagan. In 325 AD, the church council, known as the Council of Nicaea. Folks, that is where what you want to know how the religion was born? That's where it was done. And there were tens of thousands of documents that were destroyed. They could not allow any evidence to show what the real history was, because they're inventing a new one, a new God. I've shown back 6 years, 7 years ago, how this Old Testament God was the last resort. They had tried a couple of others, didn't take. Why? Because the thing about pagans, they are truly the true hippies of our species. They're kind of like really in tune with nature. And hey, man, it's your trip. If you believe that, that's cool. Just don't put your trip on my trip. You know, I can dig your trip, but you know, don't try to bring me down, man. So anyway, the first decided that Easter celebration should fall on the Sunday after the first full moon of the spring equinox, right now. And thus Easter Sunday was born, and symbols associated with nature's rebirth and renewal came to be associated with the rebirth or resurrection of Christ. You can't come and just simply say none of this matters, because it matters a lot. And if you're an observer like I am, and you've experienced these belief systems, you look at this now and you go, how could I have ever been so fucking blind? And then I constantly remind myself, well, Steiger, you were pretty blind back then, so just remember, put it in context. And we're going to get into the 6 traditions of Christmas if time allows. All right, so let's continue. So the Dark Ages were just exactly that. You see, people have a think that people had, again, this voluntary way of coming to the church, this new belief system. And by the way, it had this whole made-up history called topography. It's where you take a region that is real, with real cities, real culture, and then you drop in your reality. And it absorbs the whole perception of what reality is. And back there in the Dark Ages, people didn't read, they didn't write. Unless you were rich. There weren't a whole lot of those people, never have been. And so the country folk, which that's what pagan means, country folk, they were butchered, ran over. Listen, you only had to execute one person from a community, and everybody else falls in line. Yeah. I mean, the spirit of our people, the witches, the wizards, the magicians, the sorceresses, we've been persecuted. They can't allow us. And now they don't have any choice. And so they have to really ramp up even more, because you start spouting off this history to, I know people that once called me brother, and they ain't going to have any part of it. So, in most of Europe, Easter celebrations gets its name from the Jewish festival of Passover, blending two different gods, two completely different scripts. Yet they're trying to say, well, you see, we're just like them, and they're just like us. My ass. All right, which occurs at the similar time to the spring equinox. I mean, if you trade a nomadic people to become agrarian, and in order to grow from the earth, you have to be in tune with nature. We know that. So in Greece, Easter is called Pascha. In Italy, it is Pascua. I think that's right. In France, it is Parquois. In Denmark, it is Påske. But in Germany and English-speaking countries like England, Easter took its name from the pagan goddess Esther, the goddess of spring fertility and fertility. It's a sexual goddess. I mean, maybe they're resurrecting a body part more than they are a real person. I don't know. But the fact is, it is still, and regardless of how many people in their culture and their beliefs and what we do to our calendar and everything else, they're still worshiping her. I mean, think that they're worshiping the other thing. No. It's messed up. Man, what a mind mess. I mean, just Easter symbolism in foods. Now that we've come to understand Easter's original nature as a celebration of spring, the symbolism starts to slowly make sense. Let's take a closer look at where Easter symbolism comes from. We're about the eggs. Eggs are a symbol of new life and rebirth, just as nature returns to life after the cold of winter, or Jesus is resurrected after crucifixion. Decorating and eating eggs on Easter first became a custom during the Middle Ages, when people would decorate and eat hard-boiled eggs following Easter Sunday's Mass after fasting throughout Lent. This ritual is still popular in many Eastern European countries, where you'll find families hand-painting and eating actual non-chocolate eggs on Easter. I mean, I remember as a kid dyeing the eggs, you know? Now eggs are so expensive, people are going to the plastic eggs, but yeah. All right. Why the rabbit? Now the eggs may make sense, but did a rabbit come into all? How did that come about? The symbolism can be especially strange when you consider the fact that rabbits don't even lay eggs. But it all ties back to the concept of fertility, rebirth, and renewal as celebrated by the pagans. The sacred symbol of the goddess Esther was a hare, and rabbits have long been considered a symbol of fertility due to their ability to reproduce quickly and in large numbers. But the first official mention of rabbits or hares in association with Easter was only made in 1722 in a folklore book written by Georg Frank von Frankenau, a German writer. One of the stories recounted in this book mentions an Easter hare rabbit that hides colored eggs for children to find. The first written mention of an Easter egg hunt. Since the book was a collection of folklore, it's reasonable to suggest the Easter egg hunts were already a custom at the time. In the 19th century, the greeting card industry experienced a boom. This was because more people were able to send and receive letters and parcels by post, the internet. It's a contagion. As a result, card companies like Hallmark started to really market particular holidays with fun and festal greeting cards. Easter was one of them. Cards started to appear with cute illustrations of rabbits and Easter eggs. These are sigils. These are symbols. They're carrying an ancient goddess into the modern day psyche. Now that's some fucking magic. That is truly impressive. Popularizing the connection between Easter, bunny rabbits, and colorful eggs. So when did we start eating hard-boiled eggs and start eating chocolate eggs and bunnies instead? Around the same time that the greeting cards were booming, in Germany, here's Germany again, it was popular to eat sweet edible Easter bunnies, though these were made from a sugared pastry. At the time, chocolate was consumed as a beverage rather than a solid sweet. And by the way, the national worldwide shortage of cocoa, if you like chocolate, stock up, was still rather bitter as cocoa is known to be. However, Cadbury, remember Cadbury, the yellow plastic, checks. Ugh. I freak out every time when I think I see they still sell them. Then still a new company was experimenting with solid forms of chocolate. They jumped on the Easter bandwagon and started marketing chocolate Easter eggs. We never stopped eating them, and today chocolate Easter eggs and bunnies are one of the Easter's biggest treats. Why do we eat crossed buns? Okay, so what about the infamous hot cross buns? Believe it or not, hot cross buns are another pagan tradition. These were taken from the Saxons, who would bake fresh bread in honor of the goddess Estri. The fresh buns would be marked with a cross. At the time, the cross represented the 4 quarters of the moon, 4 seasons, and the wheel of life. It's pretty easy to see why hot crosses buns were adapted to Christian festivals where the symbol of the cross had been a strong connection to the crucifixion of Christ. And even the cross is not original to the religion. They stole that as well. Woof. All right. We could go on and on. And I see that my time is running out. Anyway, we get into so many things. It's just like, Lucifer never belonged to Satan. But you can't have the story if you don't have the antithesis. Got to have the bad guy. And then I really wanted to get in as well with Flavius Josephus and how we get into this divine thing called God, who really turns out to be a divine liar. So the whole point of this show, this class, this discussion, this forum, some of the brightest minds I know are in here. And I love it. And I think that this is just another part of this that has to be addressed. I mean, back in a former life, I almost married a Jewish woman. Many of you know the story that I even was considering converting. That Jewish rabbi was right. Do the Jewish people a favor and don't. But in my bloodline, hey, Trina, how are you, my dear? Good to see you, dear. I'm 1% Jewish. I mean, it's in my, genetics. So there you go. It still befuddles my imagination. And the more you become aware of this, the more you look into this. And listen, there are so many things that you can read online that they'll counter this. They'll try to say, well, no, that's taken out of context. That's not really. No, it's what it says. You can't apologize for something that, well, been there a long time, longer than all of us. So No matter what your belief system is, do it with excellence. It's the best thing I can tell you. It's just like this whole thing with this eclipse, and the devil's comet, all predicated upon a belief system that was made up. And how, again, I sit here because I know that book. And it's always befuddled my imagination thinking, well, how do you reconcile 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8? I mean, how do you do that? As I look back now, that was probably one of the first things that started to turn the key when I realized this God of love doesn't exist. Never has. Oh, I know that breaks a lot of paradigms for people, and people don't want to hear this, and they'll argue vehemently against it. I can understand that, but there is no God of love. The only love I have ever seen comes from people. And if this God considers me an animal, a dog, well, fuck you. You can kiss my white ass. I want nothing to do with you, and I won't have it. I broke that contract a long time ago. It isn't right. The persecution I have seen of the woman, the female aspect of our species, how even today is still under assault because of this God. This God hates women. And I read all the things people try to tell me, well, you just don't understand, Wayne, that this is both the masculine and the feminine that was separated. Yeah, all right, fine. It doesn't answer the hatred for the woman, the divine feminine. It doesn't. It's part of that illusion we're under. I know people don't like to hear this, but I'm telling you, show me this God of love. Show me who it is. Show me where it came from. Show me where it's been hiding. Because every God that I've ever loved, I can just say this, every God that I loved, every one that I had worshiped, was always about retribution, punishment, judgment. Talking about accountability, but yet the very God itself will not hold itself accountable. It's crazy. So, welcome everybody to my world. Shirley, it's right. I envy my dog's life as well. Two of them are sitting right here. And I mean, they follow me everywhere. But I mean, they eat better than I ever did growing up. I got to tell you that. And the life of leisure, yeah. Hey, Chloe, how you doing, darling? The God of love in Christianity only loved the Jews most of the time. There's the paradox, right? Hey, Susie Q, what's up? Violence is life. How are you doing? Bonnie, good to see you again, hon. Paradox Fossils, how are you? Ladies are like rainbows. Yeah. RF, what's up? Lost in Space, Monkey Experiment, So anyway, Gilbert, how you doing, brother? Glad you're here. Sean, good to see you. Indeed. Normal Girl, what's up? So yeah. I mean, maybe I'm the only one that's stating the obvious. I don't know. But if this God of love exists, I'd love it to see it to manifest. Really would. Because it's really lacking. And again, the only love that I have seen, well, if you own an animal, dogs love people unconditionally. And dog spelled backwards is God. So are we supposed to pick up something on that? I don't know. Just something I'm just thinking about. Hey, Joyce Marie, New Yoda, good to see you. Jan, hi. Well, thank you, darling. Rod, good to see you. What's up? Chris, back at you. Aztec Avatar, good. If we are lemons, let's just make lemonade. No kidding. That's a fact. You can, you know. We can make lemon meringue pie too. I like that. Yeah, that's all I got to say. Remember as a kid how I used to love the lemons because I grew up in California. And in Santa Clara, we had an orange tree, we had a lemon tree, an avocado tree, and yeah, I remember as a kid, loved to put salt on the lemons. And yeah, anyway, they say that I love movies. Right there with you. Hey, Paul Joe. Hey, Jenny. I love it. I love this group. Y'all are just fantastic. Hey, Miriam, good to see you. Well, thank you, darling. So anyway, see you tomorrow. And we'll pick up on something, but I just had to get this out because this paradoxical crap we're in as a species, as a culture of people, now you know why that we got so many issues. Well, you got that kind of stuff hanging around. Yeah, you're going to have issues. You got to love yourself, man. That's just what it's down to. Love yourself. And then I believe you'll be able to love others because there's a lot of people who don't like themselves. I mean, we all have those bouts where, just the energy, it becomes so negative and what have you, sometimes where you just beat yourself up. I got to stop doing that. We're better than that. And by the way, before I leave, you see, I think this has a direct correlation to the other side. You see, the other side, I think, has been created and painted for us to accept. I say, fuck that. I say we can create something far more beautiful. And that's what we should do here. Get grounded. Good friend Robert Scott bringing that. Just get grounded to earth. Take your shoes off. Put them out there in the yard, That's what I'm talking about. All right. I'll let y'all go. Until we meet again.